And welcome in to another edition of A Closer Look. I'm your host, Dwayne Nelson, and with me today is Lydia Blackwell, and she is with Contact 211 Johnson City. And we are glad to have you here today and to talk about something that I wasn't all that familiar with. I wasn't really familiar with Contact 211. And just tell a little bit about the background and where it started and where you are today.
Okay, so where it started, we originated towards the 70s, and it was started originally by the Methodist Church. And what they wanted to do was become a telecommunications agency that could just help people get to the resources that they needed. When the 9/11 tragedy happened, it became more widespread, and the government stepped in and said, hey, we need these everywhere. So that's how Contact 211 was really kind of established and became a statewide thing and even a nationwide thing. So that's kind of how we are now, is we're information referral plus a couple of additions to that. We've grown and expanded a little bit. So the information and referral piece is where if you're low income, or even if your average income, and for say 1 month you can't pay a certain bill, like a power bill, we've all been there, you know, right. Hard times hit occasionally and unexpectedly, and you don't know where to turn to. There are agencies and nonprofits out there that can assist with that. And so what we do is we provide the direct source, so you don't have to jump through rings of fire, so to speak. I know that that's the last thing people want to be doing whenever they're in that situation. So if you dial 211 from any of the 8 counties in Northeast Tennessee, you should get a hold of one of our volunteers. We're open 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., so pretty late. And you can get the resources you need where you need them, instead of jumping through, like I said, the hoops. And then we also have a crisis helpline. And so what that kind of entails is, if you're feeling lonely or down, just need somebody to talk to, we have trained volunteers that can just answer and talk to you, even refer you to counseling services if that's something that you need, addiction services if you know somebody in need of that. And so that's kind of our crisis line. We also have a reassurance program. Okay. It's a fantastic program. It serves primarily elderly and homebound individuals, but anybody can be on it. And we call 7 days a week. At whatever time someone wants us to call, we can call them, check on them. A lot of people have parents that may be prone to falling. Maybe they can't check on them all the time. And so that's where we're going to come in, and we're going to provide that service to just say, hey, are you doing okay today? Or have you taken your medicine today? Because sometimes people just forget stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely.
So
now, you cover a pretty wide area, pretty much all of Northeast Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
And that's how many counties?
8.
Right.
So we cover pretty well all of Johnson City counties and near that area, Unicoi, but we also cover Sullivan and Hawkins, Hancock, and all that good stuff as well.
Now, does your funding, does that come from the federal government, or is it based locally through fundraising events?
It's locally, actually. We rely very heavily on our donors. We don't get any government funding, and we are completely nonprofit. So that means that we're getting a lot of donations from like area churches that want to become involved. Maybe they want to be on our list as a referral, even for somewhere that can help pay utility bills. So we get a lot of churches and a lot of just private donors who want to see us make a difference in the community, and that have seen us make a difference in the community.
Now, if people want to, and churches included into this, but if people want to donate and even come by and see what services you offer, I'm sure that you have a way to get in touch with you guys.
Oh yeah. They can get in touch with any of our staff directly. Our direct number is going to be 246-2273, and that's 423 in front of that. And if they want to call, they can find out more information about volunteering. We are 100% volunteer based, which I'll get into that in a little bit. Right. But we are 100% volunteer based, so we rely completely on the community for finances as well as to run the operations. So we're very, very much in the community.
Now, your main base is in Johnson City, but you have, I guess, locations where you provide those services throughout the area?
Well, our actual physical location is in Kingsport.
Oh, okay.
And so that's where the volunteers come to answer phone calls and things like that if they would like to do it in person. A piece of volunteering that I do try and stress is that anybody can volunteer, whether they're disabled or homebound or whatnot. If they still want to do something for their community, I have a process where they can actually forward our office phones to their home as long as they have a private confidential space where they can take those calls. And I allow them to take the phones remotely, especially during some of those late night shifts that get into about 7 p.m. I understand people have kids and
Right.
you know, they're trying to cook dinner, and maybe you're cooking dinner and you want to step into the bathroom to take a call. I say bathroom because a lot of people have kids and that's the only private place in your house. So
Absolutely. Talk about the helpline, how
Okay.
that works.
Okay, so our helpline is basically a crisis line. I train my volunteers in a thing called QPR, which is Question, Persuade, and Refer. And that is basically a suicide assessment tool. We look at risk and we determine, do we need to dispatch some emergency services out there, or is this something that they just really need a counselor and they need to be set up with counseling services? And so that's kind of the piece of that. They're very heavily trained in mental health areas. I get a lot of students from ETSU that volunteer, Northeast, anybody interested in the fields of psychology, social work, human services. It provides great experience for them, and I try to even go above and beyond and meet any needs that they may have.
Now, when you talk about suicide and depression, are you seeing that rate increase now, say, than before that we've seen that kind of
Yeah,
numbers?
it's definitely on the rise. I actually did an article recently in Kingsport Times talking about the suicide rate increasing, especially in Tennessee, especially in East Tennessee. And I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. And you kind of have to look at both populations of adolescents and then older adults as well. Statistically, men above, I believe it's age 60 who are white are the most likely to complete suicide, which surprises a lot of people. But we get into an older population, which is a lot of what we serve, and there's factors there that people may not realize. They're retiring, they don't have as much to do to keep them occupied, a loss of purpose, that kind of thing. Loneliness is a huge thing. You're starting to get into where people are widowers and things of that nature, and maybe they've lost social support because they don't go to work anymore. And so getting them the help that they need is just beyond important, which is also why we have the reassurance program that is specifically kind of catered towards that population. But as far as adolescents go, of course, the suicide rate and really just depression rate in adolescents is increasing. And a lot of that is just due to lack of coping mechanisms. The world in the past 20 years has rapidly changed, especially in regards to technology. So we've got all of these different ways that kids can be bullied now, when before maybe they weren't accessible, especially when they went home
Right.
from school. So we're seeing a lot of different things like that, coping mechanisms. So whenever they're little, maybe the everybody wins mentality, it can actually be kind of damaging, because then whenever they do lose, it's an extreme reaction because they don't really know what to do with that.
Now, when somebody calls into your line and maybe is suicidal or maybe is just reeked with a lot of depression at the time, what do you do, and do you hook them up with other services, or how does that go?
So we have trained counselors that can call them back if they feel like they need to speak to a trained counselor. And so that's the first option that we give. We kind of lay them all out for them and let them decide, unless they're imminently in danger, of course, in which case we would find another phone and call 911 while keeping them on the line so that we can get them to a place of safety. So what we would do is we would do a QPR assessment if we felt like they were suicidal and determine the risk. If it is a high enough risk, we will go ahead and dispatch emergency services. Sometimes people won't tell us their location, and that's just part of it, because they're just not to that point yet where they're ready to have somebody come out and check on them or whatnot. But so we can have a trained counselor call them back, or we can send emergency services. We can call 911 and have them go out there, or we can connect them to further counseling. So we've got pretty well a comprehensive list of all counselors in every county.
Right.
So, and we can kind of cater to what people need. If they're more interested in, say, a Christian counselor, we have a list of Christian counselors. If they want a non-denominational type counselor, we put them in there. So.
Well, you're always needing volunteers.
Oh, yeah.
You always need help.
Yes.
And experienced volunteers are always very,
Oh, yeah.
very useful.
Yeah.
So anybody what would you say to a person out there, expertise, what are you needing?
Really anything, like I said, like psychology based, anybody in the medical field. I'm not real picky. I can train anybody. So as far as age limit goes, you do have to be 18 or older to volunteer with us just because of the nature of the calls that we get. But I look for anybody in social work. Social work deals with a lot of information referral, psychology, sociology, anybody who likes working with people or is in the field of working with people and isn't afraid to talk on the phone.
Absolutely.
Can come volunteer with us. So.
And I guess if someone has a question, then all they need to do is call you all at Contact
Yes.
211.
Yeah, if they have any questions about how the training process goes, which I'll kind of get into, the training process is pretty brief. I try to keep it pretty short term because I know that people are busy and it's hard to schedule that. But as far as the training goes, what we'll do is we'll bring somebody in and they'll train with me on one-on-one for about 3 sessions, and each session lasts about 3 hours or so. So it's not too bad.
All right. We'll have more with Lydia Blackwell with Contact 211 when we return here on A Closer Look.